Hello and welcome to Sarcastic Videos. Today we're talking about Jim Norton, Mouthful of Shame, a Netflix original comedy special. And for those who don't know, Jim Norton is a pretty dirty comic. He talks a lot about sex and he gets very graphic in the things that he describes and jokes about. So if that's not your kind of comedy, then this is not a comic that you would like. But if it is your kind of comedy, he is one of the funniest ones. So to start, there's a funny opening where he's trying to convince Rick Gervais, Louis C.K., and even Robert De Niro to give him like an introduction for his special, for his Netflix special. Rick Gervais was funny. He's like, at first wants to give him a fluff piece, then he wants to be brutally honest, and it's like way too honest about what kind of comedian Jim Norton is. Louis C.K. basically ignores him. Robert De Niro ends up slapping him around, which was pretty funny. The show is shot in New York, which I'm guessing is how they got Robert De Niro. And he's because Jim Norton's also from New York. They don't really talk about whether or not they know each other, but it was a pretty funny bit. So he starts out talking about messing with people, like when he gets recognized in public, but people don't know who or what he's from. Yeah, like he'll mess with them just because of how annoying it is when they don't recognize exactly where he's from. He talks about like how as a white guy he likes girls with big asses way more than he should. Like the Kardashians is a good example he uses. And he really likes to mess with people. That seems to be a running thing in his special. But he talks about like messing with a friend at a urinal, a public urinal, and then turning out to not be his friend, and you know how embarrassing that was. Yeah, and he talks about like one of the funny things, and it's actually an interesting way to deal with it, is when people tell you stories, but they ask you to guess things like how much this was or how much weight someone loses or whatever, and he talks about ruining their stories by over guessing to an exaggerated amount, so when they tell you the truth it doesn't matter. He has a bit about leaving a suicide note and blaming someone you already know or but barely know, like someone like just you talked to like 4 years ago, and blame them for your suicide, something like that, which I'm actually think I've heard before, but it was funny the way he did it. He has a whole story about getting caught by his girlfriend dirty texting someone, and it was pretty funny. He talks about Hulk Hogan and the Gawker trial that he had, and Hulk Hogan won it, basically bankrupting Gawker, and how great that is for people's privacy. And he does a little bit about Hogan and how impressed he was by what he saw in the sex tape and things like that. He talks about wanting to have a dirty girlfriend because he's so dirty, but then it's hard because people know him from his stand-up, and they know like all the things that he's joked about and admitted doing on stand-up. And so he has some stories about trying to meet people on social media and Tinder, and how all they have to do is Google him to find out about him and all the dirty things he talks about in his specials. So that's kind of hard to do. And he has some jokes about Cosby and Jared Fogle and how how perverted they are compared to him, who's just basically dirty, not perverted. And he talks about transgender women and how it doesn't really support them just to talk about them, but actually like having relationships with them is more supportive than just talking about someone like Caitlyn Jenner and how beautiful she is, even though you might not think she is. But actually having a relationship with a transgender person is a lot more supportive. And he has some jokes about whether or not it makes you gay to have sex with a transgender woman, which that could go either way, but he does it pretty funny. And he actually talks about Charlie Sheen and how he has AIDS, and that it worried him because he also knew Brie Olson, who's a former porn star, and Charlie Sheen dated, but also Jim Norton kind of dated only for a little bit though. So he tells a story about that, he has a whole bit where he actually involves the crowd a bit in this one, where he talks about like things that you don't want to picture your parents doing, like catching them having sex, and whether or not what age they have the sex talk with you, and things like that. And it's very funny. Like the crowd stuff, it gets a little cringeworthy sometimes when he's trying to deal with people who are trying to be funny on their own or just won't answer the questions directly. He doesn't move on quickly enough, so it gets a little awkward sometimes. But other than that, it's a pretty good, crisp special. Like, it goes by really fast. The jokes are funny. There's no slow moment. Like, there wasn't really anything that didn't land. There are funny jokes, and when he needs to, he'll pull out like some funny faces and things like that to make you laugh. The only thing that would really not make you want to watch the specials are if you get turned off by the how dirty he gets with his jokes. So other than that, like, he is a funny comedian and he is a funny guy. So for as far as Netflix goes, I'm gonna give this video a thumbs up, and as far as my rating goes, I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10 because I like all kinds of comedians, even the clean ones who never swear or tell anything about sex, and the really dirty ones like Jim Norton, who talk way in a lot of big details about sex, and they talk about it a lot. But so for this comedian, yeah, I give it an 8 out of 10. So if you like this video, like, share, subscribe, or all the above. Thank you, and have a nice day.